We have a bunch of new subscribers here on the Raiders Report after the draft, so if you don't know, if the Silver and Black make a signing, we will be making a video, and if it's a big-time signing, we're going to go live. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure the notifications are turned on, that way you never miss any Raiders news. Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. Mitchell Renz here from Chat Sports, and I wanted to make this video because every single offseason we look at free agents, and then the concentration goes to draft, and then I believe it goes back to free agents once May hits. So the Silver and Black, who are some of the free agents that they could potentially bring in? Coming up here on today's show, I have 10 names that I believe Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler could potentially target after the 2023 NFL Draft and after the signings of a few UDFAs. As it stands right now, the Raiders, after the draft, have about $16 million in salary cap space, and once they sign all their players, you're going to have a little bit less after the restructure of Chandler Jones. But when you look at the moves here that the Raiders made, Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer, you ended up taking Byron Young, Tre Tucker, which was a little bit of a weird one, Jakorian Bennett, Aidan O'Connell, Christopher Smith in round 5, Amari Burney, and the Nesta, Jade, Silvera. So one of the biggest questions out there after the draft is, okay, Mitch, if you're going to tell me we got some free agents that the Raiders could potentially look at, you got to be looking at needs, and you have to be looking to spend your money in the right areas. So my question to every single person that comes across this video is this: what is the Raiders' biggest post-draft need? Is it still defensive tackle? Is it linebacker, corner? If you think it's a whole other position, please let me know down in the comments. To me right now, there are still 4 glaring needs for the Raiders. I would like for them to add a linebacker. I would like for them to add a corner. Hell, they probably won't add a defensive tackle because they added 2 in the draft. I still do think that defensive tackle is a weakness for the Raiders. And then, if I really want to get nitpicky, right guard is an intriguing spot that the Raiders could look at. So first here for free agent targets, I'm going to start on the defensive side of the football, and I'm going to go with cornerback. One of the top players that has been trending, and I got word right after the draft from a source that, hey, Rock Ya-Sin and the Raiders have been in communication for weeks, and if they don't address the cornerback need very early, look for him to potentially join this roster. As it stands right now, this is the Raiders' cornerback depth chart, and you could look at it a few different ways. It isn't updated, just depth chart, just so you all know. Tyler Hall is a player that they like a lot, but for the moves that I'm making in free agency, I'm looking at outside corner. I like Duke Shelley. I like David Long Jr. To me personally, I believe Shelley is the better outside corner from David Long. So if you wanted to be really confident, if you added another veteran, and then that you could pick between who's the better one in this system, Duke Shelley or David Long Jr., that's going to make you feel a lot better. And then, hell, you might even be able to put Nate Hobbs on the outside because I know the Raiders are very high on Tyler Hall. Let's go to the next post-draft free agent target. Markus Peters, another player that I have discussed in lengths on this show because of his connections with the Raiders. I told y'all before that he told my buddy Graphic that he wanted to join the Silver and Black. However, he is coming off, I would make the argument, his worst season as a pro. He allowed the highest passer rating of his career, but I still know that he brings that tenacity, that swagger that this Raiders defense needs. And on top of that, he's always been able to force turnovers, which is definitely something that this Raiders defense needs. Let's go to another player here, and just so you all know, the logo that you see behind these guys, for those of you that are actually watching this video and not listening, it's the team that they played on last season. Casey Hayward was a stud for the Raiders in 2021 in the Gus Bradley defense. I will admit, the Gus Bradley defense and the Patrick Graham defense are vastly different. I mean, they truly are. Graham wants to get physical. He wants to run press man. That's not what Hayward is best at. But you know what? The Falcons just released him. He was so good with the Raiders. He was a Pro Bowler. If he was interested, and you know, you look at different defensive schemes, and that's what Graham's going to do. But what happens if they want to go cover 3 or they want to do some sort of zone and you don't have confidence in a Duke Shelley? Well, that's definitely something to look at. So out of the 3 cornerbacks that I mentioned, I want you to pick one to sign. Rock Ya-Sin, Marcus Peters or Casey Hayward. My answer personally for me when I think about which one of these guys I would sign, well, how about this? I'll tell you after we talk about today's sponsor. Now, today's show is presented by Roan. I love Roan because no matter what I'm doing, when I'm wearing Roan, I know that I'm going to look good. And I'm a big believer when you look good, you're going to feel good. And if you like the shirt that I have on, it's a part of the Commuter Collection. Roan helps you get ready for any occasion with the Commuter Collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have Roan Commuter Collection on. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. On top of that, Roan is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. The Commuter Collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/chatsports and use promo code chatsports to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/chatsports and use code chatsports. It's time to find your corner office of comfort. So in terms of the top cornerbacks that I would look at from the three names that I just mentioned, Rock Ya-Sin would be number one on my list because he's a better fit in Patrick Graham's physical defense. Get up there, push some people, hit somebody in the mouth. Casey Hayward will be number two. And this might surprise a lot of people out there, but I'm actually going to go number 3 is Marcus Peters. Coming up next here on the Raiders Report, presented by Roan, let's look at some linebackers because during the NFL draft, man, me, the nation, Chugs, hell, even my mother at times, I'm sure was screaming, are the Raiders going to draft a linebacker? The answer to that is, I guess no. Well, they did, but it was just really freaking late in round 6. So one of the names that I'm going to throw out here is Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr does have some connections with some of the Raiders coaches, more on the offensive side of the football, but there is still somewhat of a connection there. 58 tackles last season with the Dallas Cowboys, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. To me, though, Barr has always been a good all-around linebacker. He's obviously taken a few steps back, but I'm going to remember the good years that he had in Minnesota. And honestly, hell, you give me the year that he had this past season in Dallas, he's still probably one of your better linebackers out there. If the Raiders decide to go with a 4-2-5, then they might not necessarily need to go with another LB because they have Divine Diablo, they have Robert Spillane, and according to early reports, it sounds like Robert Spillane might actually wear the green dot on defense. Luke Masterson, though, very underwhelming in terms of what you could hope for. UDFA, Burney, the rookie that they drafted, they have so many question marks, and I mean so many question marks at the linebacker position. To me, one of the things that I would love Barr to do in any player is to just be that leader because that's what this linebacking unit needs. It needs a leader. Let's go to another player. I'm going to go with Rashaan Evans, and the reason why I'm looking at Evans and the reason why I'm looking at a lot of these players that I have mentioned so far today and a few more, if I've learned anything this offseason covering this team, it's if you have some sort of connection with Josh McDaniels, if you have some sort of connection with Dave Ziegler, if you have some sort of connection with this coaching staff, then that's going to go a very long way. Rashaan Evans made most of his career on the Tennessee Titans. Linebacker, Mike Vrabel, those are the connections that I know the Raiders look at. And if it really comes down to a few players, I mean, this guy had 159 tackles last season. It's just a name to keep in mind. Let's go with another player here, Kyle Van Noy. I have mentioned Kyle Van Noy in terms of free agency targets probably more than just about anybody in the last 2 years. Why? McDaniels and Ziegler. Van Noy also has spent some time in Miami, where he was under Brian Flores, another Patriots guy. This past season, went to the Los Angeles Chargers, had 46 tackles, had 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. One of the reasons why I know that they're interested in a player like him, they brought in on a visit Andrew Van Ginkel, who is a defensive end / outside linebacker that can get after the quarterback, that can stop the run and drop back into coverage. Well, guess what? That's what the Raiders would get with a player like Van Noy. You got Crosby, you got Chandler Jones. Yes, you drafted Tyree Wilson, but I'd still want another player that if you want to get versatile and you want to drop back a defensive end, guess what, Patrick? I'd rather you drop back Kyle Van Noy and not Max frickin' Crosby. Let's go to another edge rusher that has tons of Patriot ties. Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers has played with the Patriots. He played with the Lions with Matt Patricia. Then he went to Miami, which not as many ties when Trey Flowers ended up going there. But to me, if I'm Flowers and I'm his agent, I sit up here and I go, okay, what was the defense? What was the coaching staff that made me, at the time, the highest paid edge rusher in the National Football League? There was a time where Flowers signed a 6-year, $90 million deal and had some injuries, wasn't quite good fit in certain situations. If I'm Flowers, I'll take a team-friendly deal with a coaching staff that helped me get to where I was trying to go. Seems like a pretty good deal. And, well, there's no sale taxes either. Let's go to another player here that's got some connections with Patrick Graham. It's Markus Golden. There's been times in the last, I'd say, year and a half where Golden has at least come in on a visit. Played last season with the Arizona Cardinals, ended up getting cut. 48 tackles, 2.5 sacks. If you have the connection with Patrick Graham and you're looking for a cheap outside linebacker or a cheap edge rusher, I do think Markus Golden is definitely a name to keep in mind. So I'm going to combine the linebackers and I'm going to combine the edge rushers here all in one. I just asked you earlier about the corners. Well, let's just say when you have the money. Let's say hopefully the Raiders pay Josh Jacobs, you get all your draft picks, cool, you have your UDFAs, we're ready to go, but you can only afford one player that's on screen. Are you going to go Barr, Evans, Noy, Flowers, or Golden? Type AB for Anthony Barr, RE for Rashaan Evans, KVN for Kyle Van Noy. Give me a TF for Trey Flowers. Markus Golden is MG. For me personally, if I had to rank these 5 players, number 1 is Kyle Van Noy based on the overall fit and based on his ability to still play at a pretty damn high level. Anthony Barr would be number 2. Trey Flowers at 3, which might surprise some people. Rashaan Evans, and then I am going to go with Markus Golden. Still 2 more players here to discuss as potential post-draft free agency targets for the Raiders. But if you don't already know, you can follow me on social media, literally everywhere, at MitchellRents365. And for those of you that are watching this on Monday, I'm going to be live on Locals later tonight. And if you watch this on a later date, I'm also going to be live on Locals Wednesday. I'm starting to do Monday, Wednesday live Locals, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. That way, more people can tune in after work. Let's go to Duron Harmon now. It's a safety. And if you were to ask me, Mitch, who are some of the top players that you were hoping the Raiders would re-sign? Duron Harmon, Eisen were definitely very high on that list when I made that video at this point 2 months ago. Harmon is a veteran. He's a professional. He's a player coach, and I knew when the Raiders signed him. In fact, the name that I threw out there was he's going to remind a lot of y'all of Casey Hayward. Why? Because he's just that dude. Yes, I understand that the Raiders signed Marcus Epps already. Duron Harmon, though, to me, can still play a little bit of a hybrid role. There's reports out there that Paul Mayo, the UDFA from USC, could potentially move to linebacker. It sounds like that they've put some weight on him. Christopher Smith, who the Raiders traded up for to pick at 170 overall. I still believe, though, Duron Harmon would have value on this team, and it also wouldn't surprise me because I do think that there's some interesting trade rumors out there around Merrick, because he's not a McDaniels and Ziegler guy, and he's been underwhelming his first 2 seasons. Let's go to the final name here, and I'm just going to be real. This is not somebody that I really want. It's just a name that you have to keep in mind. And the reason why I say that is because I always go with that old expression, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's the Patriots connection. The amount of NFL insiders, the amount of people out there that were linking the Raiders to Paris Johnson Jr., that were linking the Raiders to Peter Skoronski, and the Raiders were, in fact, interested in Peter Skoronski. But the amount of players that were linked at the offensive tackle position to the Raiders, to me, is something to think about. Isaiah Wynn, right tackle, has the relationship with Carmen Russillo, has it with Ziegler, has it with McDaniels, and he's not going to be going back to New England. So if I'm Isaiah Wynn, coming off arguably my worst season I've ever had as a pro, same situation here. Could you potentially line up with the Raiders? I know Jermaine Illuminor wants to play right tackle, but he could still play right guard, and he can play it at a high level. So as it stands right now, this is the Raiders' offensive line currently, and if they added Isaiah Wynn, it would be one hell of a battle. So here we go, my post-draft free agency targets. At cornerback, Eisen, Marcus Peters, Casey Hayward. Then at linebacker, Anthony Barr, Rashaan Evans. From an edge standpoint, you could probably even put Kyle Van Noy as an outside linebacker as well. But Kyle Van Noy, Trey Flowers, Markus Golden, and then to round out this list, Duron Harmon and Isaiah Wynn. So those are the top 10 free agents that I believe Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler are the most likely to target post-NFL draft and post-UDFA signings. But this show has been made on the back of the nation, being diehard fans, being people who literally took a sign to the draft, and we're going to be giving shout-outs tomorrow on this, that said Josh McDaniels eats corn the long way. Man, well, I've done a lot of cool things on this show, and we've had a lot of trends. This one might be one of my favorites, but please let me know a free agent that the Raiders should sign. And remember, if they do sign a big enough name, we will be going live here on the Raiders Report, and I don't want you to miss it because usually those shows are pretty fun and they can get wild. Have a good Monday. I'll see you all tomorrow for Raiders Live, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific.